Well, I was thinking this week about a Quaker conference that I went to this past spring, and where one of the event sponsors, a non-Quaker wanting to sell us insurance, started listing all the good things Quakers had done over the years, the anti-slavery work, the work for women's equality, our feeding initiatives after World War I and II, yada, yada, yada. It felt a bit like pandering. And he didn't even mention one of our finer accomplishments, that the oldest bridge in the United States was built by a Quaker, William Penn. The Frankford Avenue Bridge over Pennypack Creek, a stone arch bridge built in 1697 and still in use today. To be accurate, William Penn didn't build it himself. He had the Pennsylvania General Assembly order every local male to help build the bridge or be fined 20 shillings, roughly $66 in today's money. A few people, no doubt Baptists, snidely observed that the bridge made it easier for Penn to travel from his home in the Pennsylvania countryside into the center of Philadelphia. People can be so negative. We've been reflecting on the first maps in our lives, be they people or paper, and the way and effects that they always have on us, continue to have on us as our life unfolds. More specifically, we've been discussing and identifying the common features on maps and their parallels in our own lives. And today I want to talk about, as you can guess, bridges and their significance. Not just because bridges help us get from one geographical place to another, which is indeed handy, but because bridges make it possible for us to cross the cultural gaps that stand between us and others, which in this era of separation and disconnection is increasingly vital. We need to find a way to make bridges. One of my first bridge memories is the Lincoln Memorial Bridge in Vincennes, Indiana, crossing the Wabash River into Illinois. My grandparents lived about 4 blocks from that bridge, and we used to walk down to the bridge when I was a kid. And if you've ever been on that bridge, how many of you have been on that bridge? Ned, I know you have, Ned. Yeah. If you've ever been on that bridge, you know that there's hardly anything on the Illinois side, except for a few taverns, because Illinois' drinking age was younger than, and so students from the university would travel back and forth on that bridge. Other than that, there's nothing for 9 miles until you get to the little town of Lawrenceburg. But on the Illinois side of the Wabash is a monument to Abraham Lincoln, because it is believed that that's where Abraham Lincoln and his family crossed the river. I remember seeing that monument and asking my father why the monument to Abraham Lincoln was on the Illinois side of the river. And he said all the people who were afraid of the river stayed on the Indiana side. And only the brave people, like Abraham Lincoln, crossed the river, so the statue went on the brave side of the river. Now, when my father told me this, I knew nothing about ferries. And I asked my dad how Abraham Lincoln got across the Wabash River if there wasn't a bridge, and my brother Glenn slugged me, which was generally his opening statement in all of our conversations, and said, "You idiot, he went across on a helicopter." Didn't I know anything? Well, apparently not. What I remember now, other than my brother's grasp of history, was the idea that there were two kinds of people. One kind summoned the courage to cross the gaps, so statues were built of them. The other kind were those who crowded the shore, longing to cross, but lacking the courage. So they just built houses and stayed put right where they were. And that there were always more people who hung back than moved forward, which is why Vincennes is bigger than Lawrenceville. That was my childhood reasoning, which turned out to be somewhat accurate. Of course, crossing the Wabash River became a moot point when bridges were built, but there for a while it took real bravery to cross a river, to traverse that gap, and I guess in a way it still does require great courage to cross these gaps, these chasms. It has always been easier to fear the gaps that divide us than to bridge them. Bridges present us with choices, one of which is this: should I cross this bridge or should I burn it? I was always taught never to burn a bridge before or after I had taken it. Were you ever told that? Don't burn a bridge. I taught that to my boys. Don't burn your bridges. People told us that just in case we might have future need of someone or something, so shouldn't cut off the relationship altogether. Don't burn your bridges. You never know, you might need that connection, that relationship in the future. But I've been thinking about that, about burning bridges. And I don't think that's true, because I think there are some bridges that merit burning. Not only after we cross them, but before we take them in the first place. There is some territory you and I should simply never enter. Some chasms in our lives exist for a reason, and we are wise to stay on this side of them. If it is true that we are known by the company we keep, it is doubly true that we are known by the company we avoid. Some bridges should be burned, not crossed. Here's how to tell the difference. If crossing a bridge requires the surrender of our morality, we should remain where we are. If crossing a bridge requires us to ignore tyranny or disregard human dignity, we should stay put. Some bridges should never be crossed. Some chasms are so vast we can never reconcile where our conscience requires us to be and where others ask us to be. I'm reading an interesting book this week. It's a book about Georgetown University. It's a Jesuit college in Washington, D.C. The book is called 272. It's just that number, 272. And it's about a decision made by the Jesuits in 1838 to sell 272 enslaved African American Catholics, sold into early graves their own brothers and sisters in the faith so they could save and expand the largest American Catholic mission project at the time, which was Georgetown University. The slaves were sold to 2 plantations in Louisiana in the deepest South, where slaves were treated brutally. Husbands separated from wives, children from their parents, families broken and scattered, never to see one another again. The book 272 is about those families and their descendants. The sale of the enslaved people generated so much money that it also funded and supported Jesuit missions, schools, and colleges in other northern cities, including Boston College, Loyola University, St. Louis University, and Fordham University. It is no exaggeration to say that the spread of American Catholicism was made possible by the sale of Black Americans. This is one bridge Georgetown University should never have taken. Isn't it so true in our lives that some bridges appear at first to be our salvation, when in fact they can be our ethical ruination? Some bridges we take would have been better off burned. A Quaker query for us as we stand before the bridges in our lives. Will this bridge unite me with those from whom I have been estranged? Will it help me love more deeply and thoroughly? Or will this bridge take me to a moral territory I should not enter? May we always know the difference.